on the night of the 13th to the 14th of January, 2020 of the year. Women's screams were heard in the echoing corridors of the hostel on Leningradsky Prospect in Kemerovo. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. The screams grew louder and more desperate. The girl begged for help, and the neighbors began to call the number 112. They asked me to send the police. Operator 112. Girl, can you hear her yelling out there outside the door? What am I supposed to do? Where are the police? Why are you talking like that? And how do I get the door, and they'll kill her there today? The police will come, no need to swear. But time passed, and no one went. By that time, neighbors from different apartments from the 5th to the 8th floor had gathered near the door from where the screams came from. They knocked on the doors, demanding to open them. They heard a girl running up from the other side, and a man dragging her back into the room. The neighbors were unable to listen to the heart-rending screams. And again, they dialed the number 112. But the dialogues with the operator did not bring results. Hello, we should call the police. The neighbors have some kind of slaughter going on. The girl screams right hysterically. The call was handed over to the police officers. A crew will be sent for disassembly. The screams continued, but no help came. In the duty station at this time, the people who were supposed to send the crew to clarify the circumstances simply ignored the call. Apparently, they decided that this was an ordinary family showdown in an ordinary dorm room. Operator 112. Girl, well, where's the crew? I switched you to the police. What did they tell you? They didn't answer us, they disconnected. 102 ask. 102. The dormitories unsuccessfully calling for help heard the phrase Vera, forgive me, and I love you very much from behind the door. Only after that they managed to open the door and get into the apartment. There they found the girl's mutilated corpse. The murderer himself was in the bathroom. According to information, the killer was drunk and did not try to escape. When the law enforcement officers did arrive at the scene, he voluntarily went with them. She screamed for 40 minutes, they began to break down the door. And that's it. She was already lying on the floor. The neighbor came up, felt it. Everything is cold there. One of the neighbors told me. The neighbors called the number 112 again, reported the girl's death, and asked what they should do now. Hello. The service was called an hour and a half ago. So far, no one has arrived. They broke down the door on their own. The girl is already dead. Our actions. What's with the girl? The girl is already dead. For an hour and a half, the rescue services were called. The girl screamed help, save. No one helped or saved. Here he finished it after all. No one came, barely restraining emotions, the operator said, putting down the phone. The deceased girl's name was Vera Pekhteleva. She was 23 years old. Oksana, Vera's mother, says that her daughter was kept in a dress closed to the neck and at the funeral home. They tried to restore her face with makeup for 4 hours. And I was almost gouged out, the skull was demolished. It's not her face. According to witnesses, Vladislav Konyus beat the girl for several hours, although the indictment says that he beat her only with his palms on the face and then strangled her with an iron wire. He is accused of murder under Article 105 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, relatively easy among such. It was as if he had taken a defenseless girl's life in one moment and not mocked her for 3.5 hours. Vera's relatives do not agree with this. They are sure that the murder was not just committed with extreme cruelty, it was planned in advance. There was an opportunity to save the horse from the horse's brother at 12 in the morning. He called his brother in Novosibirsk and said that he would kill her. The question is why my brother didn't think of calling 112 in 2, 3 or 4 hours. The police would have reacted anyway. The representative of the injured country, lawyer Ilya Bolshakov, said that during the interrogation, the girl's father filed a petition to return the case to the prosecutor's office, as he was sure that the crime was qualified too mildly. However, the court refused to satisfy the petition, considering it unfounded. Many years ago, the paths of Oksana and Eugene, Vera's parents, diverged. Now they have new families, but they managed to maintain warm relations. Vera was a welcome guest in her father's new family. We went on vacation together and made plans. The girl had an example of two families in front of her eyes where everyone treats each other respectfully, as native people should. That's why the parents were somewhat surprised when they found out who their daughter was in love with. Back in Kiselevsk, in the general company, Veroshka met Vlad. We were all against this relationship. A boy with a complex character did not set particularly high goals in life, says Vera Pekhteleva. The woman was aware of this relationship. My daughter shared all her secrets with her. In Kiselevsk, many people knew that Vladislav was left without a family early. First, his mother went to build a new life with another person, then his father committed a crime. And after the trial committed suicide. Death was terrible, and Vladislav became an unwitting witness. Of course, the guy's life is not easy. It's a human pity for him, but for Veroshka, we wanted a completely different fate. And her choice was not approved. We were waiting for the relationship to come to naught, Vera Pekhteleva bitterly admits. The details of the novel passed by acquaintances, friends, and even parents. When Vera's father found out about their relationship, he asked to stop them. He believed that Vlad had bad blood, since the guy's father committed suicide. But the daughter did not stop communicating, but only stopped sharing it with her parents. Vlad never came for family holidays. He is not in the photos that Veroshka posted on the networks. It was as if she was hiding him, says Vera Pekhteleva. She confesses. It seemed that Vlad saw in Veroshka an opportunity to arrange his life. The girl had good prospects. The parents planned to help their daughter with an apartment. Everything was going well with the future work, too. And after university, the girl would definitely have built a career. But her young man could not boast of the same. Even the dorm room where Vera and Vlad lived for about a year was paid for by Vera. And one day she let it slip in a conversation with her mother. Vlad can't live without her. And then in November 2019, Vera Pekhteleva heard the words she had been waiting for a long time. In the telephone receiver. Vera and Vlad break up. The girl took the most necessary things and returned to the student dormitory. She also told her friend Tatiana about the breakup. For the rest of the things, the girl planned to return later. Vera had been calling Vlad for several weeks, but he was either working, or relaxing with friends, or he just wasn't up to it. The more unexpected was his call with an offer to come on the 13th of January. Vera had an exam scheduled for January 14th, and it was unlikely that she planned to stay with her former lover for a long time.
So, well, look, I'm still here. I'm assembling a box right now. Well, basically, I think I have half an hour left. I'll take a taxi. Well, I hope I'll be in the dorm somewhere at 6.
Vlad met her drunk and closed the door. We don't know what exactly happened behind closed doors. Only one thing is clear. The guy refused to let the girl out of the room. Kira, please, I'm asking you seriously to leave me alone. Rest for now, it's elementary. I need this person at the moment, and she is with me together. I don't need it. I'm absolutely enough in everything. Please don't help me in anything. I'll help you in absolutely everything today. At some point, heart-rending screams rang out in the echoing corridors of the hostel. The girl screamed so that the neighbors immediately realized that terrible things could happen. They rang and rang. For an hour and a half to number 112. But then they broke down the door and saw the deceased Vera. Only after that, several police crews arrived at once. But it was too late. His brother who killed his brother was scrapped, as if we had already prepared in advance, apparently. Somehow I knew something about it. The case file contains an examination. According to the document, more than 100 different injuries and 50 wounds were found on the body. They were applied with blunt and sharp objects. The change of objects indicates the desire of the accused to cause as much and prolonged physical pain as possible. The victim's petition says, according to the conclusion of the medical examiner, the girl received the first minor injuries 6 hours before her death. Every hour the guy struck harder and more often as a result. On the 14th of January, 2020th year. Around 6:30, the girl died. Canis is being tried under the first part of the murder article, which assumes from 6 to 15 years in prison. But due to the fact that Canis beat the girl for a long time, her relatives insist on a more cruel article. A murder committed with extreme cruelty. Then Canis will face from 8 to 20 years in prison or life imprisonment. The relatives of the victims asked to requalify the case at the stage of the investigation, and the investigative committee met them halfway. But the judge refused to change the article to the investigators. In December 2020 year, the relatives once again asked the court to return the case to the prosecutor's office in order for the case to be reclassified. But the court refused again. The motive for the murder in the case file is jealousy. Not mine, so you'll be nobody's, says the girl's mother Oksana. The murder case is moving slowly and drearily, she says. It began to be considered at the end of November 2020 year. And since then, all 7 meetings have been postponed for various reasons. This can be seen from the file of the Kemerovo court. The mother of the deceased suspects that delaying the case is in the hands of Canis. If the court sentences him to a general regime colony, a day in jail will be credited to him for a day and a half in the colony. Vladislav Canius decided not to take the blame completely. Vera's ex-boyfriend pleaded guilty only partially. They say that he struck Vera only 4 blows and did not want to kill her. Who inflicted the other 52 and finished off the 23-year-old girl, the court will have to find out. At the court session, which took place on the 2nd of March, again no verdict was rendered. The trial was postponed to the 11th of March. The court was attended by Canius' brother, whom he had called the day before, as well as an investigator and a forensic expert who examined the girl's body and a dorm room. For the first time, the defendant spoke in the courtroom. Vladislav Canius asked the medical examiner how many of his actions caused harm to Vera Pekteleva's health. When asked from the courtroom why Canis killed Vera, he remained silent. At the next hearing, the judge decided to call the residents of the dormitory where the murder took place as witnesses. Canis was unhappy with the court's decision to listen to all the prosecution witnesses. In communication with his lawyer, he expressed the opinion that these testimonies could negatively affect his sentence. Under a petition demanding tougher charges against Canis published on the Change.org website. Today, more than 135,000 people signed up. A few months after the murder, another criminal case was opened against Mikhail Balashev, the shift supervisor of the duty unit of the Leninsky Police Department, and Dmitry Teretsyn, the senior operational duty officer. Balashev and Teretsyn refused to cooperate with the investigation. They did not admit guilt. According to them, when they called from Leningrad, this is the address of the hostel. The investigative team of the department was located at a different address, where the man's corpse was found earlier. The police also pointed out problems with fuel, for example, gasoline in one of the cars of the immediate response group ran out at 3 in the morning, and messages from Leningradskaya were received after 4 in the morning. The trial of the police began on the 26th of February. Before the start of the meeting, they did not talk to each other, nor to lawyers, nor to journalists. As it turned out in court, the police officers were not taken into custody. They chose a measure of restraint unrelated to the pretrial detention center. Moreover, they continue to work in the Leninsky Police Department. No one has yet suspended them from service. Before the start of the meeting, the judge asked all the participants of the trial whether they were against the presence of journalists. The defendants and their lawyers were against it. 4:55 I have a Leningrad signal going through 2838. The neighbors are screaming. The woman doesn't open the door. The applicant claims that there is joy going on there. At 16:31, a signal passes. The police were called in the panic room. Now the door has been opened. The girl is unconscious. And 6:36, throw off the corpses in the apartment of the NP directed. Even before the meeting, the criminal case began to be discussed on Instagram. We believe that such an active discussion, photographing and videotaping, placement in the media can have an impact on the court and on the subsequent verdict, said the lawyer of one of the accused, Lyubov Voronina. However, the judge found the arguments insufficiently weighty, and the press was allowed to cover what was happening. Now both policemen are being tried under Part 1 of Article 293 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Under this article, The maximum penalties are a fine of up to 120,000 rubles, or correctional labor. The father of the murdered girl, Yevgeny Pekhteleva, on whose behalf the petition was drawn up, asks to change the article to Part 2 of Article 293. According to it, the maximum penalty is up to 5 years in a penal colony. In the petition of Father Vera, it is described that on January 13, 2020, Balashev and Teretsyn took up daily duty at 9:00 in the duty station of the Leninsky Police Department of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia in the city of Kemerovo. On January 14 at 4:55, they received a message from the duty unit of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia in the city of Kemerovo about a family conflict in an apartment on Leningradsky Prospect. Balashev entered the message into the electronic card, but he did not promptly respond to reports of a crime being committed, did not send police officers. At 5:21, Balashev went on a break. At this time, his duties were performed by Teretsyn. At 5:28, Teretsyn, who knew about the first call, received a call from the operative on duty about the screams. Thus, the factual circumstances set forth in the indictment indicate that there are grounds for qualifying the actions and omissions of these persons as a more serious crime of a socially dangerous act. The petition notes. However, the defense of the accused stated that there is no reason to return the case to the prosecutor's office. According to lawyers Balashev and Teretsyn, there is no causal relationship between the actions of the police and the death of the girl. Today, at this stage of the consideration of the criminal case, we have not examined any evidence, and we have no right to investigate. But I believe that in this situation, it is simply impossible to impute serious consequences in the form of the death of the victim Pekhteleva to our client through negligence. Firstly, a causal relationship must be established between the actions that were committed and the death of Pekhteleva. That is, her murder. And I believe that the cause and effect relationship between the actions of my client and the death of the victim, of course, has not been established. And it cannot be established. The lawyer of one of the accused, Lyubov Voronina, said. The defender of the accused clarified that calls from neighbors were received by the service 112. So the police simply did not know what situation the girl was in. In addition, the lawyer drew attention to the fact that the death of the girl came not from beatings, but from strangulation. This is a one-time action. And where at what point did the guilty person decide to use the object with which the victim was strangled in a real case? It is not installed at all. But in any case, death came from strangulation. And that the guilty person will use the injured object against her and will block her respiratory tract. Our clients, of course, do not know and could not have known. That's what their lawyer Voronina said. She also stated that the prosecutor's office filed a motion to requalify the case, only because the hype began in social networks and the media. The court ruled. The criminal case against Balashev and Teretsyn, accused of committing a crime under Part 1 of Article 293 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, should be returned to the prosecutor of the Leninsky district of Kemerovo to remove obstacles for consideration by the court. This decision was read out by the judge. After the hearing, the lawyers of the accused did not talk to journalists, as did the police themselves. They decided to appeal the court's decision. No matter how outraged literally the whole country is now, saying that the police have the courage to beat people at rallies, but how to help? You will not call them. As State Duma Deputy Oksana Pushkina said before, the responsibility for mocking faith lies with the state. It could not prevent what happened. In this situation, the state was represented by just 2 officers who were most worried not about the murdered faith, but about their own skin. But before blaming specific police officers, let's look at how the law enforcement system works as a whole. Anonymously, one of the Kemerovo city police officers told the following. In fact, one of these policemen contacted colleagues immediately after the signal and asked someone to go to the call. But everyone was busy. I know that he called and said, "They will put us in jail for this if we don't send the crew. We need to send a crew." But there was no crew. Now we can say that the duty officer had to call the central committee, say that there is such a signal, we can't work it out. There are no people. Then the car would have been allocated, and gasoline would have been found, and then they would not have been put on trial. But it usually does not reach the Glavka. On the ground, The bosses immediately put down such initiative, they say, and why do you immediately jump over your head? Why didn't you tell us? Even if you did. But the big problem is that the police are divided into different divisions, and no one wants to work. Well, she would have sent me the central address to check. I won't take no sweat, I won't send the centralists. Why? Well, because they block the Leninsky district. I have no one to send. The central blocks the Leninsky district, the central silence, and we have. Now the shift supervisor is subordinate only to the investigator, the operator, the district police officer, and the driver. That's it. And those attached forces, as they are now called, separated. PS separately, traffic police separately, Rosguardia, and so on. And the attendant has to call everyone and beg to go to the call. And it's true. They really sit and beg to do their job. We have, for example, some kind of corpse happens without crime. We need to see that there is no crime. And the duty officer begs us to go, for example, to a drunk who is rowdy and breaks windows somewhere. In fact, this is the protection of public order, not our task. But Rosguardia does not take this. How many times the attendant called, they answer them. We are on alert. He sends an investigative task force or a precinct officer. And then it turns out that the crew of the Rigardi just boarded us. One drools, sleeps, and the second is hanging on the phone. It was different with the police. Then we had our own PS, our own traffic police at the RAI department. If suddenly someone began to dissemble that he was working there somewhere, the duty officer could freely scold for hack work on a general divorce. There was a similar story in Novokuznetsk about 10 years ago, when the situation was also underestimated. Then the signal came. Cries for help. A young employee, a senior sergeant of the PS, left. Neighbors also said that the woman was screaming, and now silence. A policeman calls the Ministry of Emergency Situations to open the lock, and they say to him, "We will not open it without a precinct officer." As a result, the district police officer was taken from another call. The door was opened. And there a man killed both mother and daughter. And at that moment, when everyone was arguing at the door, the woman was still alive, she could be helped. And that's it. The young sergeant was convicted. Well, that's it. You cannot raise applications and explain it. Yes, and to understand there is no crew, it's all over. There are no official statistics on the number of victims of domestic violence in Russia. Human rights defenders are engaged in calculations. According to the Consortium of Women's Non-Governmental Organizations, in the 2018 year, 61% of all murdered women in Russia, 5,000 out of 8, as many as 0.3%, were killed by their partner or relative. There are several cases where police officers were involved for negligence in relation to cases of domestic violence. The most famous such case is the case of Margarita Gracheva in the 2017 year. She wrote a statement to her husband about death threats. But the police did not accept the statement. 3 days after that, Gracheva's husband cut off her hands. The investigative committee opened a case against that precinct officer. But, as Mari Davtyan, who represents Grachev in court, says, this case is not moving in any way. Although formally the investigation is ongoing. In the 2019 year in Oral, a former police officer was sentenced to 2 years in a colony settlement for not accepting a statement from a woman who was later killed by a roommate. According to media reports, the employee told the woman, "If you are killed, we will definitely leave, we will describe the corpse." The girl's father managed to sue the local Ministry of Internal Affairs for 100,000 rubles. The court reduced the amount of compensation demanded by the relatives of the deceased 50 times. In the summer of the 2020 year in Moscow, a story similar to the Kemerovo one happened. The residents of the house called the police and asked to check the apartment, from which screams were heard. However, the police officers did not respond to the call. Vera's mother, Vera Pekhteleva, is still waiting for a call from her girl. It's easier for her to believe that Veroshka is now somewhere far away, in another city, building a career, working in the OBEP. And everything is going well for her. Yevgeny Pektlev, the father, reproaches himself for not being tough on the issue of his daughter's relationship with Vlad. The uncle who took his niece's body from the morgue still remembers with horror what he saw. And numerous friends and girlfriends can't understand why Vera contacted this person. How can I live without her now? It hurts.
There was simply no such situation that we agreed with her, and in the end she did not answer the phone, that we reconciled with Vlad, and that was it. Therefore, I did not take this situation seriously either.
The whole city came to say goodbye to Vera. Our church is designed for 600 people. It was packed. Many people knew her, appreciated her, loved her, barely holding back tears, says Vera Pekhteleva. It's like life has stopped for me. At first it existed, but now I want only one thing, that Kanyus and those policemen who ignored the call should be punished fairly. Oksana admits, the thirst for retribution and the support of her family give her the strength to live on. She also says that after the resonance caused by the death of her daughter, many good people appeared around her, supporting, helping to achieve justice. And he believes all those responsible for the death of their daughter will be punished. Perhaps Vera's death will help save other girls who will not become victims of cruelty and indifference. There are no cops, no fires.
And you shout even louder, maybe they will appear.
They should be.
To whom do they owe what? Are you like a child? What kind of world do you live in? You were almost killed just now. Wake up, let's go.
You don't understand, they don't take people out. They decided to leave it there.
And what?
Listen to yourself, you fool. There are hundreds of living people, hundreds. You have a conscience, don't you?
Tim, they are nothing to us.
Don't you understand that we live like pigs and die like pigs just because we are nobody to each other?